welcome to a new video. This is week 4 of Inktober, and there are only 3 more days left to go until the challenge is over. In this video I will be showcasing the drawings that I did for the last week. And the first order that I got on day 22 was Caprimulgiformes. That includes the nighthawks, nightjars, putus, oilbirds, and frogmouths. An interesting thing about the order name is that in Latin it translates directly to goat milker, and that's because the Europeans thought that the nightjars in their area were drinking the milk from their goats, and that was completely incorrect. These birds are primarily nocturnal and completely insectivorous, so they don't really have anything to do with goats. The bird that I chose for this day is the common nighthawk. This was a taxidermied bird from the bird case in Cordley, and I decided to draw it sitting on the log that it was taxidermied on, mostly because they tend to sit very horizontally and require horizontal places for their nesting sites. So the tops of buildings is actually a really good place for them to breed and to put their nests on. And the color that I chose this week is the Iridescence ink silver, and I'll probably use that for the last 3 days of Inktober as well. For day 23, I got the order Sphenisciformes. That's the order that includes penguins. And so this week has been pretty busy for both my partner and I. And this Monday we went to the Oregon Zoo to get some references of some of the birds that I haven't got any references for. And one of those birds is the penguins. The Oregon Zoo has a flock of Humboldt penguins, and we had problems taking pictures of them in the past, so what I ended up doing is bringing my iPad along, and because the area is so dark, the iPad adjusted really well to the light. I took a lot of videos of the penguins swimming underwater, so while I was drawing this I was going through each of the videos and watching the penguins swimming so that I could get an idea for what to do for this. Humboldt penguins are pretty interesting. So most penguins are found entirely in the southern hemisphere, and then the northern hemisphere belongs to mostly the alcids, which are kind of considered the penguins of the north, but they have retained their ability to fly. The Humboldt penguin is pretty interesting in that it tends to nest in a place that you wouldn't really expect a penguin to be, and that's the coasts of Chile. It's kind of an arid and dry place, but what they do is they find rocky places and they will migrate up the coast and build a scrape or a burrow to put their eggs in, and that's where they typically raise their young. They're also found quite often in captivity, so I know recently the world is pretty broken up about the penguin in Japan that passed away recently, Grape Coon, and he got pretty famous because of his attraction to an anime character. But they're pretty adorable, pretty charismatic little birds, and they were a lot of fun to watch at the Oregon Zoo. They were very friendly and would come up to the glass and made for some really good video reference. There is a series of small rhombuses for the background in this one. Day 24 was Pelicaniformes, and this includes, as you've probably guessed, pelicans. And I've decided to draw a California brown pelican. So this particular order doesn't just include pelicans. It actually, due to recent genetic analysis, it includes a lot of other birds that used to be included in different orders. And some of those used to belong to the order containing storks, which we will get to next week. But it now not only includes pelicans, but it also has herons, ibises, spoonbills, the hammercop, and the shoebill, which you wouldn't really think is related to a pelican, but due to recent research, they found that it is. The pelican this particular species of pelican used to be in serious danger. It used to be on the Endangered Species Act, and one of the primary causes was hunting, but also the use of DDT in the 40s was a huge problem for these birds, as well as a lot of other birds, including raptors. And they, at some point, had almost 100% failure rate on their reproduction because the eggshells that they were laying were just too thin and they were crushing the eggs. But since DDT has been banned, the brown pelican has made a really good recovery and is no longer considered threatened or endangered. And for this drawing, I decided to do an open shape. I might do that next week too. I think it turned out really well. Day 25 was the Anseriformes, and you might know this order because it contains ducks, geese, and swans, but it also includes some other more esoteric birds, including screamers. This is one of the oldest orders of birds, so its lineage dates back pretty far. We also got references for the wood ducks at the Oregon Zoo. There were a pair of males that were being very loud and swimming around and harassing all the other ducks in the pond. Wood ducks are pretty interesting because they tend to nest in trees, which is why they're called wood ducks. They are somewhat insectivorous, but they will also consume acorns, and that's why they're also called acorn ducks. And the males have a really beautiful plumage. The females are also really striking as well, but the males in particular have a really gorgeous iridescence to their feathers, which is why I really wanted to depict that. Wood ducks are also another example of a bird that was once really seriously in decline, but for very different reasons. They were mostly hunted for their meat as well as their feathers, and thanks to the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, the wood duck populations have recovered. Day 26 was the Procellariiformes, and in English these birds are called the tube noses. This particular order contains albatross, petrels, storm petrels, diving petrels, and they're called tube noses because of the unusual shapes of their beak, and that shape helps them detect the scent of fish from many miles away. So because they live in really large colonies and because their food source is really patchy, the scent is very important for them to find their food. I chose to do a black-footed albatross to represent this order. And albatross are pretty cool. The wandering albatross in particular has one of the longest wingspans of any bird on the planet. And they're really good at soaring. They spend most of their lives flying. They have a really long secondary set of feathers and a really short primary set that allows them to gain lift pretty easily and maintain that lift as they're flying to their next source of food. The black-footed albatross in particular is threatened because of fishing incidents where the bird gets tangled up in fishing lines. And the Procellariiformes in general are very threatened because of that, as well as the introduction of non-native predators to their nesting colonies. Day 27 was Gaviiformes, and this order includes loons. This particular species is a common loon. They spend most of their lives on the water, and they require really large bodies of water in order to live and to take off. Like a lot of the birds that I've done for Inktober recently, the loons have feet that are really far back on their bodies, which makes it really difficult for them to actually walk around on land. So the water is almost like a flight strip for them. So they have to go really fast on the water in order to actually take off and go up into the air. There was another order of birds, the Hesperornithids, that are not related to the loons, and they had a very similar situation, but their wings were even more reduced than the loons, and some of them couldn't even fly because their wings were completely vestigial, which means that they were a feature, but they're no longer used for what they were originally intended for. So they had wings, but they could no longer fly with them. And that's probably one of the reasons why they went extinct. Because the loon, while it does require water, it can still possibly fly to another lake, whereas the Hesperornithids were incapable of moving to other bodies of water if their particular lake was in trouble. This is another species where the young will sometimes ride on the backs of their parents when they get tired from swimming. And day 28 was the Coliiformes. This particular order includes the mouse birds, and this order is completely confined to sub-Saharan Africa. The mouse bird, there's only 6 species of them. This particular one is a speckled mouse bird. We took pictures of it at the Oregon Zoo. There were, I think, at least a dozen of them there. One of the really cool things about them is that they have pamprodactyly, which means that with their arrangement of toes, they have 4 toes in the front and no toes in the back. But the outer toes have a little bit of an external rotation, so they can kind of move them if they have to. They're kind of interesting species. They live together in flocks of 20. They'll typically cuddle together for warmth. And they don't perch so well because of their feet arrangement. So they'll actually just hang off of branches and just kind of chill out. So that's the end of week 4. Next week I will probably post a video of the last 3 drawings together, and that will conclude our Inktober. There will probably be one more video as well, just going over the drawings again and talking about the stuff that I learned while I was doing this. So I hope you like this video. If you do, please give us a like, comment, or maybe even subscribe. And I hope to see you in the next video.